Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to part 9 for our platform shooter series. In this video, we're going to be adding an animation for our player. If you come into our player sprite right here, you can see we've just got this generic sprite. Well, we're going to import a new one. I'll provide a link to this one in the description. If it's named the same thing, then it should automatically import it because it will know that it's a strip and import it correctly. So obviously importing a sprite is not an undoable action. Do you want to continue? Yes. Here we go. We've got a little animation here. You can play it. I've got the speed set to 30. Yours might default to something like 15 probably, which actually doesn't look bad, but in game I found that I wanted to speed it up a little bit more. Oops, I just clicked and that moved my origin. So our origin's at bottom center right now. I think that will be okay. Let's pause this animation here. We need to let's start implementing this actually before I get into details about collision masks yet. But if we come into our player and we come into the step event, we can manipulate the movement speed inside of here, or the animation speed inside of here. So right here, when our H input is not equal to 0, this means we're attempting to move, so we can set our image speed equal to something like 0.5, well 0.6. And then here, when we're not moving, we'll set image speed equal to 0 and image index equal to 0. So the image speed affects how fast it animates. The image index is what frame we're on. Well, when we're not moving, we want to be the very first frame, this one right here. So that's why we set it equal to 0 like I did there. Now when we're jumping, we might actually want to change sprites, but for now let's just say if we're in the air, image speed equals 0. Well, no. Yeah, that should be fine. Image speed equals 0. Image index equals 6. Now 6 is actually this image right here. That's not a bad jumping one. Well, actually that's 5. This one's 6, I think. Anyways, this is the image we're going to be using for jumping. Okay, so we've got that set up. If we run our game, there's going to be an issue, but I want to show you this real quick. So we're not animating. Why not? We added the code. We should be animating. Well, we overrode the draw event, and what that means is we're drawing the player ourselves, which is beneficial for flipping the player and setting the Y scale and X scale and not changing the collision box for our player. But for our image index, we simply passed in, for our sub image here, we passed in 0. Well, we want to change this to be image index. That should force the player to display the current image index that we're on. You can see we've got jumping and moving. Our character animates now. But it doesn't look very good when we move backwards because he kind of looks like he's moonwalking a little bit. So we can fix that. And the fix is actually to copy the flipped code right here. Come into our step event and just add this up here. Right here. Now you could turn this into a script, but since I'm using the demo version, we don't have a lot of scripts, the trial version of GameMaker Studio 2, so I don't want to use a script for that. But if you have the full version, I would recommend turning this into a script that's like something like get flipped. Like that, and then you can just call it whenever you need to get whether or not the character's flipped. But anyways, we don't have a lot of scripts, so I'm not going to do that. But what we can do is set our image speed equal to flipped times H input times 6. So this will take whether or not we're flipped and our horizontal input, and it will set our image speed to be either basically -6 or +6 based on these two values that we pass in. So now let me kill these real fast. Now when we move forward, we should move that way. When we move backwards, it should animate in reverse. And it works for both directions, and that's the important thing. Okay, so we've got a basic animation for our character. Sometimes you'll notice if you look really close, we're like 1 pixel above the ground. Now there's a couple ways to fix this. If you wanted to move the character's collision mask, which we'll probably want to do anyways, just because if you look at the collision mask that it provides by default, it's this entire image here. That's, you know, if the bullet hits right here at this corner, it's going to kill the player. Well, we don't necessarily want that, so let's switch this to manual, and it gives us these little boxes here that we can modify. We want to make sure that we're the same distance from each edge, because if you have your collision mask more like this, where you're not the same distance, let me show you what that actually does, just to illustrate this problem here. Let's kill these. What it does is you can actually end up getting stuck inside a wall when you flip the character. It seems to be working okay. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am though. I'm pretty sure that if you have this and your origin isn't centered in it well, you can flip your character and get stuck inside a wall. I just think it's not enough here to affect it. Like we might have to do something more like this. And the reason is because of our movement speed, it might be enough to get us outside the wall still. But oh, I know why. Huh, that's interesting. So because we're custom drawing this sprite, we're not actually flipping it. It solves that problem. So good news. We already have solved the problem of having a weird offset, having a potentially incorrect distance between these by custom drawing the sprite. So our collision mask actually doesn't flip. But you saw that it did give some weird results, so you do kind of want to keep it pretty similar here. So now that we've set up a collision mask, oops, we kind of went a little bit low there. You could potentially go, you know, like up a pixel or two on the bottom, and that would allow your player to sink into the ground just a little bit. I would consider this to be kind of a band-aid fix to the problem, but to a certain degree it actually looks kind of good to have the player land more on the ground like that. So I might leave that. But first I want to show you the real fix, which is for all of you who have OCD and just can't stand when there's like a tiny little space between the player and the ground. In our check for landing, we can actually round the Y value, because what's happening is our Y value is sub-pixel, which means it could be like 200.5 or something. And so that means that, and I'm OCD as well about this, so this fix is nice, but that means you need your Y position. Well, when the Y position's like that, the GameMaker doesn't necessarily know where to draw the player. So what it does is it just attempts to draw the player where it thinks it is, but it might actually round it down and draw 1 pixel above the ground. So all we have to do is every time we land, we just say Y equals ceil Y. And what this does is it rounds up. So every time we hit the ground, it will round up our Y value, which actually pushes the player down, since down is the positive direction. So it will round in the downward direction, I guess I should say. And that should allow our player to always land exactly on the ground. And because our auto tile has a little bit of a black outline, it can still kind of look like the player's not exactly on the ground just because of that black outline. But if you look close, you'll see he should always be landing on the ground now. In theory. I think so. So a couple things I want to fix before we move on. Number one, I don't think we're actually moving back to normal scale fast enough. So I'm going to set these to 2. Oops, I didn't mean to hit F4. And I think this will allow our player to kind of, I don't know, the squash and stretch was a little bit too slow for me. So I think this will look better. Okay. So we've got animating, we've got our squash and stretch. I'm gonna, like I said, because of the little outline around the bottom of our auto tiling, I'm actually gonna maybe drop this by 1 pixel there in the collision box and just allow the player to sink into the ground just a little bit more that way. I think it feels like the character's on the ground. And somehow I broke it. What did I do? Our collision mask is manual. We're on rectangle. We should be good for each frame, right? Like if I switch frames. The collision mask should stay the same. So I'm not sure what happened there. When I moved that up, it broke the collisions. If you land and you get stuck in the ground, huh? I bet we're rounding down into the ground with our rounding the Y value. So let's not do that. I'm not sure why it worked before but doesn't work now. But what we can do is round the drawn Y value. Oops, that's the gun. We want to seal this. And I think that will fix the problem without ever allowing us to get stuck. Because moving the Y value could potentially be dangerous. Which is why we end up getting stuck. So there we go. Now we just round the drawn version. Oh, and we always round it to be lower. And that fixes the problem. We should have pixel perfect collisions now. If we come into our player sprite again. Oh yeah, that's still down. And we should be good now. Okay, so let's talk about game design a little bit here. And where we want to take this game. So I want to make it kind of like the old Marios. I've talked about this a little bit, I think, before. Just a single screen, high score game. Enemies come in from pipes or maybe just from the ceiling. Our player can warp left and right on the screen and run around and shoot them. Our bullets look kind of lame right now. That would be a good thing to fix. Maybe in part 10. But first let's try adding warping. And we'll come into our room and go to tiles, ground tiles, and auto tile. And I'm going to add, so what I want to do, we're going to have to update our collision tiles, but that's fine. What I want to do is actually design a level here, and I'm actually going to take out the enemies for now. Okay. Let's get the ground tiles. And I'm thinking I want some sort of a middle platform. It's hard to tell if that's exactly in the middle. And then maybe some top platforms where the enemies come out of. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the same. So that means this does need to come down a little more, right? 1, 2. Let's see. 1, 2. 1, 2. Nope, it's right. Okay. And I'm just going to fill this one. Now we want to be able to probably jump up onto it. I want to make sure we can jump high enough. Don't know if I want the player to be able to oops, that's too high, I think. There we go. And I think I'm going to erase this right here, and this will be where the player can warp like this between sides. And obviously if I make the enemies come in through here, then we don't want walls there either. And maybe we'll have a spot in the top where the enemies can come through as well. Is this pretty much the center? I think this is pretty much the center right here. Looks pretty centered to me. So I'm going to erase that. Like that. So we'll let the enemies come in from here, here, and here. Now what we need to do is update our solids. I'm sure there's plenty of them in the room. Might be easier to delete these really big ones. Oops, except the ground. That one's useful. Okay, let's get this one. And we'll use it right here. This one, I'll fill this in. And this one right here needs to be smaller. Now we need to make sure that we actually add a little bit of solid coming out here, because if our player's going to warp through this, they need to have something to walk on. So we'll get that set up. We're getting close here. There we go. Let's come back and get our solid more like this. Add a little bit here as well. Just to make sure. Okay, we're looking good there. Oh, this one should come out just a little bit. Looks good enough. I don't know if our player can make that jump though. We're gonna have to find out. Oh yeah, we can. Perfect. So this will be like level 1. Let's add warping. So what we're gonna do is I actually want to create a script for this. Let's create a script and we'll name this warp. And we're probably only going to warp horizontally, but what we'll say is if sprite width, let's see, let's get some variables. So var half width equals sprite width divided by 2, and var, that should be good, if x is greater than room width plus half width, x equals negative half width, if x is less than negative half width, x equals room width plus negative half width. Or minus, wait, no, just plus half width. Then inside of our player, we'll come into the step event. At the very end, we'll just call warp. And hope this works. And that did not work very well. It should only affect our X position, right? So, room, oh, well that was silly. No, that's right. Room width plus half width. Let's look at it again, see what's going on. It's a good opportunity to debug here. Okay, it appears then when we come back, it drops us down into the ground for some reason. So that's this right here. Room width x equals plus half width sprite width. That is interesting. It also appears that when we come through this side, it starts us up higher and drops us down. So I wonder why that is. We're never manipulating the Y position of the player. Oh, duh. It's because my level's not correctly designed. This one's higher than the other one. Goodness gracious. Is it one higher? It's a little tough to tell, honestly. I thought there was something wrong with my code, but really, still could be, but there we go. Okay, now I just get rid of this. And let's put the tiles in correctly. There we go. Let's try for our second time. There we go. We've got warping. Bullets don't warp. And we probably want them to. But we have a nice little script for that. So come into the bullet. In this, add an event, a step event, and just call warp. And there our bullet should warp. I'm accidentally clicking outside the level, but you could technically get one that would warp forever if you could go exactly horizontally. This is overpowered right here. Now I wish we could create an enemy to run into that. Let's see if we can create. Let's put some enemies in real quick. Oops, I'm on the tile. We need to switch to instances. Okay. Let's try this again. I don't know if I'll be able to get it over there in time. Enemies don't warp yet. I forgot about that. So let's make enemies warp now. And we're going to put this in their step event, not inside of a state. Because we want them to warp no matter what. Now this is funny, and this is something that one of you guys have brought up before too, which is that enemies only actually die when they're in their move state. And so because we keep hitting this enemy back into the knockback state, it actually never dies. So how would you go about fixing that? You know what? Let's have that be a challenge. How would you fix it so the enemy can die when it's not inside the movement state? So pause the video for a few seconds and see if you can do that yourself. Okay, hopefully you're done. I'm going to show you how to do it now real fast. It's obviously not super hard, but we just copy this right here. The death. And we put it inside of the step event. That way our enemy can die no matter what state they're in. And then we don't have that issue that we ran into just barely. He killed me and then I killed him. Nice. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. It was kind of fun. I'll be doing more here soon. We'll be adding new enemies. I'll be working on some artwork. I've been doing the artwork for this, and so sometimes it takes a little bit of preparation to get the artwork ready. But I'll be adding some artwork for the enemies, improving the bullets. We'll add some screen shake, kind of spiff it up a little bit so it looks really good. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, be sure and like it and share. And I will talk to you guys later.